Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest webinar, Fact versus Fiction, exploring AI's real impact on procurement. We have got the chat box working, but mainly for this session, please use the Q&A box to put any questions. We'll aim to answer what we can. Others will give some feedback and respond to later. We've got some polls to get some live information from everyone today, so look forward to seeing that. But let's get on with the conversation. Delighted to be here with Nick and Rizwan from the Hackett Group, and I'm Graham Crawshaw from CASME. The focus for today, we want to be talking about AI, where we're up to. We've got the impacts on third-party spend, our own ways of working, and very excited, Rizwan is going to do some live prompt engineering effectively and talk about that. So looking forward to that towards the end of the session. We're recording this. The recording will be made available to you. And I know that's often a question that comes up. So that's where we're up to. Nick, over to you to get going.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Graham. I always like to start off any session like this on the topic of AI with some basic definitions. I know a lot of people talk about AI and sometimes it's never 100% sure which aspects we're talking about. But just to say, look, AI is one of those most popular topics right now. There's a lot of hype in the market. Compared to last year, I think many procurement teams, many sourcing teams in reality have made a lot of progress, right? Our own data shows us that in terms of enthusiasm, effort in the topic, it has increased by, to give you a number, 12 times, right? So like last year, something like 5% of teams would say they're piloting. Now it's more like 60% of teams are doing stuff in this space. So whenever I'm talking about AI, I think about it as a collection of capabilities, right? That does more than goes well beyond just automation, right? So machine learning, natural language programming. Would you believe it if I said to you the whole concept behind AI was actually created in the 1940s or 50s? And yet here we are, it's 2025 and it's gotten a lot better. But really where I want to spend a bit more time is to talk specifically about Gen AI and Agentic AI. Agentic AI being the latest hot topic in this whole hot topic of AI. So if we're talking about Gen AI, we're talking about smart conversational chatbots as one example, right? At the start there, I was saying, hey, I was using Copilot as an example. That is one real life example of how we can use Gen AI capabilities, right? Smart conversational chatbots become available in our tools in our systems, if we're using Fairmarket or iValue or Ariba or whatnot. But Gen AI, it's all about AI that can interact with us in a conversational way and create human-like content, right? So it can speak, type, create movies, create songs, write a poem, right? So that's the conversational aspects there. And one great example is the smart conversational chatbots. So chatbots have gotten a lot better in recent years, right? Agentic AI takes it to the next level, being able to handle more complex, more challenging problems, right? Being able to work on a more independent, autonomous, even more automated basis, right? And some real life examples here would be like autonomous driving agents, the full self drive, if you're using the Tesla or the BYD equivalent, right? Automated IT tools that are able to identify and block, cyber threats. The market traders, the stock market traders will increasingly use black box algorithms, right? That is a collection of agents and so on. But then the diagram on the left-hand side, right? I talked about we've made a lot of progress on this topic. Who still uses their Alexa or their Siri or their Gemini, right? I'd put them in the example of like a traditional chatbot there in the bottom left. But whenever I'm thinking about the topic of AI, I like to think about it in terms of two dimensions, right? What is the level of automation that it brings? Also, what is the level of integration, right? So those traditional chatbots that we use to set a timer when we're boiling an egg or play some music, I'd put them in that traditional chatbot, the conversational chatbot, right? It's lower levels of integration and we haven't actually used them for much. Where the AI becomes more interesting is like that bright blue or the dark blue AI box, right? So if we're using the iValue or the Ariba or the Fairmarket or some other tools, right? So we've got our app, it's got some AI capabilities in there, right? Call that native AI, and it's able to do things like the autonomous sourcing on tactical spend, like do some CLM analytics or some contract summaries for us, if you will, right? Where things become even more interesting is we have, the Microsoft Copilot or the new SAP Joule agent building toolbox. These are examples. I'd say, look, they're much more highly integrated because Microsoft product or SAP, it might be the backbone of a lot of the tech that we use, but it may not be as highly automated, right? So we still have to write a prompt or we interact with it on a voice basis. Whereas you compare and contrast that to, say, the box there that's called agents like Fair Market, we can make that slightly less integrated, but a lot more automated if we switch on some of the automation capabilities like automated supplier discovery, automated supply haggling, even automated award or PO issuance, right? So the technology does exist. There is stuff there that we can use, but it's a developing landscape.
Okay, let me share with you what we have seen. So at CASME, we've gone out to our members and really asked them, what are you actually using AI tools for? So we've polled literally hundreds of category managers throughout the world. And I think this is quite interesting because there is consistently, and it's actually been like this now for a number of months, consistent feedback as what is being used, starting with negotiation preparation. Well, anyone that's joined the joint Hackett CASME negotiation webinars will know the message is always about preparation, and we never do enough. So actually, rather than worry about the AI taking over the negotiations, at this stage, let it help you prepare. Do all that modeling, the what if, the management of sort of pricing options, taking the role of the supplier. So it then enables you to do your negotiation. In practice, if you've got a large value spend, you're not going to be comfortable with that being done by AI at the moment. How long it will take before you are, I don't know. But certainly at the moment, negotiation preparations. Contract management is number 2. So the ability to actually understand your contracts, understand new contracts, identify clauses that are going to perhaps hinder your organization. Just that whole repository and interrogation of contracts is number 2. Number 3, spend analytics. Unless you've got clean data, a lot of this is going to result in problems and challenges. So to help you clean your data, get consistency, segment data, understand what it's looking like as a annual sum, then a great use for the AI, that ability to process so much information. And then finally, market intelligence, asking questions, whatever you want to know, you can get a good feel from it. So those, despite all the hype that we're seeing, those are the main 4 applications for AI that are actually being used by procurement now. The reasons why companies are holding off also go into 3 consistent buckets. Data accuracy, which I think links with that whole data cleaning point. The challenge of APIs, actually integrating systems, still expensive, prone to error. And finally, there are errors in the systems. ChatGPT being convincingly wrong in the information that it's been given you. So you need that combination of AI, but also your own human intelligence to actually make sense of the information that's being used. Tara, let's get everyone engaged. Let's run the first poll to get some immediate benchmarking from everyone here. So can that poll be set live? And the question is, which spend categories have you seen as being most impacted or challenged by AI-enabled technology? And you can select all those that you think apply. So what we've got in terms of the list of options includes customer service, contact centers, digital, IT, technology, telecoms, fleet and fleet management, anything FM related, construction, maintenance, general equipment and supplies, HR services, marketing and advertising, professional services, travel, or other. And if you've got a really interesting other one, put that response in the chat so we can all see what you're thinking on that. So which spend categories have you seen already as being most impacted or changed by AI enabled technology? So I'll give you a few more seconds just to respond that. So yeah, tick all that apply from your experience and the working that you're doing at the moment. So thank you for responding. We've got 155 people on the call live. I know we had 450 register. Many joined from different parts of the world, expecting the recording. If you're watching the recording, sorry, you can't participate in the polls. He says, yeah, don't they normally say, yeah, you can still participate, but you may still be charged. I think that's what the programs say. Anyway, I'll shut up. Let's end the poll and share the results. And the results are, forget the percentages because you've had multiple responses, but the percentage here. So customer service, contact centers, digital IT and telecoms, and then thirdly, marketing and advertising. So that's the results. Nick, Wiswan, don't know if you've got any comments on those points.
Pretty much as expected. I always have digital at the top, followed by sales and marketing in my mind. That's what we have coming up in the next slide or so. Rizwan?
Yeah, no, pretty much. Marketing and advertising is an area that's actually got the biggest traction. But in terms of maybe spend categories, it hasn't quite materialized yet, maybe within the supply base.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's move on. So, and stop sharing. Thank you, Tara. Another slide from Casmi. We wanted to know which categories really do benefit most. So slight variation on the wording, but it's very similar. I think the message here is there's not consistency. No surprise, some categories are more likely to be suitable to AI. And I think this is important to take into account as you develop your strategies, as you do the planning within the function, to recognize that, yeah, those like marketing, like IT are much more likely to benefit. So that's where you should put your focus. It'll be an interesting one to see as that changes as time goes on. But yeah, certainly certain categories really are going to benefit from some of the investment in tools. Nick, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Just to say, look, there is a lot of hype in this space, but part of the session is to dispel those myths, right? We called it facts versus fiction. So part of the discussion, part of the presentation today is to try and bring those concrete examples to life, give you the confidence that, hey, real stuff is happening here. The other point I'd make is that a lot of the vendors in the market have just rebranded. What they've been doing from a broader automation perspective is, yes, that's absolutely AI, right? So sometimes it's good to actually see in reality what's actually happening. There's a lot of progress been happening in the AI space. The rate or the acceleration and progress really is real. The models are getting much better. They use a maturity scale. I think it's a five level scale, and they'll say that they're about 3 of 5 on that scale at the moment. We're really only starting to go beyond the co-pilots, the GPTs that I was talking about earlier. If you're using them, sometimes you see new buttons on there like deep search or deep think, right? So the advanced logical thinking or reasoning or just searching better is starting to come to life. Lots of folks will say, hey, agentic AI, it's all about developing agents, but external commentators will say, well, we're really only at the start of the journey there, right? The models are improving, the technology is improving, so the chips that drive a lot of the models is getting better. I heard some analysts say it's improving at a rate of 3 times every 2 years. The data centers, which have the racks and the arrays of the chips and the boards, are getting much bigger. They're scaling up rapidly. It was only, 6 months ago, Mr. Musk, he built his Colossus supercomputer. It had 100,000 of these chips, and he set it up and got it running in 3 months. The biggest one, he has now scaled it up to 200,000 chips, if you will. there are a number of challenges. Graham mentioned a bunch of them before, but just to say, look, right now the technology is an enhancement. It's not to replace humans, if you will. For sure, it can do some of the automation, but there are challenges around hallucinations, as an example. So one story we like to tell Rizwan is, you were going to write a white paper on prompt engineering or AI, and I asked the Copilot to draft one page of text for you and include the references, and it went away and created a bunch of white paper references that looked really, really interesting. We all wanted to read, but the reality was none of them actually existed, right? So the key message here is it's a journey. We're progressing quickly, and the diagram on the left-hand side just points out, right? So we are earlier on in terms of some of these models, and earlier on in terms of the agents, and there's more progress to be made here. So we can cover this one quite quickly and go on to the next, if that's okay. So AI's impact on third-party spend, right? So we ran the polling question. We asked you, well, where have you seen the areas of greatest impact? So from a hacker perspective, through some of our partners, we wanted to share with you some data, some estimates, right? And it shouldn't be a surprise. You see many of the same top-rated spend categories that the audience had picked up as well. So the IT, the digital in top place in terms of potential saving. You see some granularity there in terms of opportunities. If it's app development or end user support, optimizing infrastructure. In the last month or so, I heard a conversation in terms of a real example. What is the opportunity here? I heard a conversation between the CEOs of Microsoft and Meta, and they were talking about, okay, so of the code that gets written into our source programs, how much is actually written by the AI, right? So you heard from Meta saying, well, it's more like 20%, and the CEO of Microsoft was saying, well, ours is more like 30 or 40%, right? So that gives you at least one case study example, a reference point to support, is that cost saving potential, or what is that cost saving potential? I know we have a polling question coming up on what are we actually seeing in reality. Another example, it's at the bottom of the page there around HR services. And all of these areas will have some routine and administrative work like managing scheduling or managing my calendar or just other administrative drudgery. Like for sure the AI can help us here, but there is also specific activities that the AI can help us. On the HR side, we see things like in the recruitment and the talent pipeline, so identifying best fitting candidates, doing some of those first interviews, using analytics and data to better manage resourcing and workforce, skills assessment, identifying areas of non-compliance or compliance. But I just wanted to point out another case study example, right? And this is an example from IBM. So they recently let go quite a number of people, right, in their HR function. It's actually as many as potentially 6,000 people. So they'd replaced a lot of those more routine HR activities with one of these smart AI-empowered bots. They called it the Ask HR. And their statement was, hey, in terms of the routine HR activities, right, questions around leave balances, time off, updating my employee information, master data, documents, payroll questions, right? The AI was able to replace 94% of those activities, right? So there's some real life, robust, solid case study examples out there, which gives us more confidence about the scale and the size of the impacts here, right? So a key question I've had from a number of clients is, hey, Nick, okay, we get it, the spend categories, the activities, okay, there's some numbers there in terms of the potential saving, and you can Google that, you can see a lot of that out there on the web from the consulting companies, professional services, the analyst companies, and the numbers seem really, really big, but what are we seeing in reality? And that's a key question. So if we jump in there, please. This is our second poll.
Second poll, yeah, excellent. Thank you, Tara. Let's go live with that one. So this is really what you're driving at, Nick, isn't it? Where we really want to understand what cost savings on third-party spend have been achieved through AI-driven price reductions, new AI services or product enhancements, and just select one on this particular poll. The options are AI opportunities are not yet appearing, 0% savings, 0% savings, but AI is enhancing, prices have increased with AI, then a 1 to 10% saving, 11 to 25% saving, 26 to 50% saving, or more than 51% savings. And as always, if you've got something that's completely off the shelf, off the wall, put it in the chat and then we can share that information. So really, we hear a lot of the hype, as Nick's been saying, but does that translate into actually achieving more when it comes to savings and price reductions? So I can still see the activity. Give it a few more seconds. We've got say 160 on the call. So please, the more people that respond, the more accurate the information and the messaging that supports the presentation that we're giving. So I knew as soon as I say that, there's a rush of responses there. In the interest of time, let's end the poll there and share the results. And this time we can use the percentages because you've only answered one. 31% have said, yeah, AI opportunities are not yet appearing. Still 25, well, it's really 27%, 0% savings, and then 1 to 10% savings at 18%. So I think that says there's a lot of work still to be done. Back to you, Nick.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. This confirms when I've run this same polling question with other audiences, right? It's early days, right? So if you're thinking, well, hey Nick, you had something up that said 20 to 30% cost savings. Well, work out what the cost model is for your supplier or the contract or the spend category. Understand what goes into it. What AI are we talking about? Is it impacting the product design, the bill of materials, the manufacturing process? Is it just augmenting or changing labor? And once you have that understanding or some estimates, then you can think about what is a realistic potential here. But in terms of its early days, I'm not surprised to see, hey, almost a third saying AI opportunities haven't yet appeared. I'm also, not that surprised to see the prices staying the same, but actually the features, the functionality of what we're getting in our product or a service getting better. So a quarter of people picking that answer. Price not coming down, but we're getting more value for money, arguably. 10% price is saying it's gone up, right? So again, who's got the pricing power? That one, I'm kind of not surprised, but that's a little bit different from what I've seen before, right? I guess because it's early days, it's new. If you're differentiating yourself in the market or you have pricing power, then yes, you can put the price up. But the area that I'm not really surprised at seeing is the 1 to 10% savings, right? The almost 20% picking that answer. And under 10, what is it, 7% picking actually, 11 to 25% discount. So, a quick summary, 2/3 or about 3/4 saying, hey, yes, we're not seeing yet the savings or the price has actually gone up. And it's really that last third or the last quarter that are able to capture some savings. In my own mind, I'm thinking, well, logically, suppliers saying we've invested in this new tech, we need to recover the investment. Maybe it's the case that the people who are able to negotiate the savings are going to a completely different solution, a different vendor, new startup, new vendor, right? And they don't have the legacy, they don't have the history, they're not running like 2 product suites or 2 service seats at the same time. So they're able to say, actually, this is entirely new and it's just better and faster and cheaper, and we're able to capture that benefit. So that's kind of what I'm thinking in the back of my mind. So interested also after the session to read what folks have written in the comments. But feel free to chat, right? Is anybody surprised by the numbers? Are there any secret lessons that people have been doing that have, absolutely do this to capture your savings? But have familiarity with your cost model. Think about, well, how is AI changing, augmenting the spend category in the back of your mind? Do some rough calculations and challenge the supplier with that. And if they're not giving you what you want, ask them when. Ask them why not, right? Provide that challenge, right? The more that we can collectively increase that competitive power in the marketplace, the sooner that we can look to capture some of these benefits, is some of my thinking there.
Okay, let's stop sharing and move on, Nick.
Yeah, perfect. Some great comments there. I see Richard's comments about seeing a lot of hype and not really AI. Yeah, so the machine learning, the automation being tagged as AI, absolutely. Absolutely, right? A lot of stuff we would have just said, wasn't that there before, has been rebadged and retagged. I also saw the comment about, hey, name some vendors. That's coming up on the slide after this. You see some examples on this one. This was, if you're thinking about, hey, we need to get started, we need to do some stuff, there's some great, high-level ideas, concepts here to help to get started. But if you're thinking about, hey, I still want to see concrete examples, there's some data there in the top right. So at the end of last year, some of the most popular examples were in the autonomous sourcing for tactical spend area. Right, a lot of the big multinational companies were already well underway, piloting, trialing, running tenders, projects in that space. Another area was in the contract lifecycle management, the CLM tools, whether or not it was do me a contract summary, whether or not it was contract analytics, or even maybe guided contracting. And another really popular area that people have called out is just the insights or the analytics, and that being enhanced with the AI. And I guess this might be the machine learning, or it might be, hey, the natural language programming, right? Where some of the reports get written. But we always say, hey, if you're getting started, think about a combination of build and buy strategies, right? And we think, hey, across source to pay, so sourcing, category, supply management, and the operations, you probably want to buy just because there's a lot of procurement technologies out of there, right? Some of the examples that I just mentioned, like the autonomous sourcing and the CLM stuff, it's not new, right? They've been working on that for 10 years, if not 5 years, right? And to Richard's point, hey, a lot of this stuff was there before, and they've picked up, hey, it's the AI label, but that stuff is more proven. On the data, the insights, the analytics space, well, certainly on the insight space, I encourage teams to think about building and leveraging more of those best-of-breed analytics tools, because the questions that you're trying to answer with the data, the insights, is usually much more specific to your company, right? But also, apart from the Power BI, the business objects and Ultrix and all those fun tools, right? There isn't a great analytics suite for procurement out there. I can't say, hey, this is my spend control tower, or this is going to give me all the insights answers that I need. In terms of key steps, we should be well beyond education and awareness by now. One key area, and Rizwan, I know you're going to be talking about this in the latter part of the session, is prompt engineering, right? So if we're using Copilot, we're using some of the other tools, or maybe we already have access to some smarter conversational chatbots in our tools today, we need to be able to write effective instructions, what we call the prompts to these tools. So being a great prompter, being able to write a good prompt, a solid prompt, and get the answer that you expect, that's becoming a new skill. So we absolutely need to be on top of that. Then it's a case of reviewing our existing tech landscape to see what we can take advantage of, right? Is it that our existing supplier has already deployed some of that tech? It's on a SaaS subscription, it's already there, we just didn't realize. Or there's a new module that we can get switched on, get that deployed, and that gives us easy, hopefully cost-effective access to some of this new tech. Then we always encourage to look externally. Where have we got gaps? Where have we got holes, right? Is it in the sustainability side? Is it the risk side? Is it the insight side? As some examples, and think about what else can we benefit from. And then fourth, build something yourself, right? For some teams, the Googles, the Microsofts, Amazons, that might be their first point. They'll just go and build it, right? But this slide is a great high-level summary in terms of, hey, what are some of the concrete ideas? But I do want to go to the next slide, please, Graham, because I saw right at the start of the session, someone was asking, hey, what tools are you talking about, Nick? Right, so if I'm talking about autonomous sourcing and tactical spend as an example, Fairmarket is a great go-to tool. Pactum, if you're a bigger company, Keelvar, Orchestro bought BidOps. On the complex services side, Globality is another one. Contract management, the CLM tools, the market is heavily fragmented, right? Luminance says, hey, we've got legal level AI. Icertis or Process Unity are some popular ones. But then I also say, hey, some highly featured but more reasonable vendors like Cobblestone might be a good one to look at. Contract strategies, SAP has a new tool. Cooper has a new category workbench. You've got the Searchuos, bought by Cooper, Akiro Labs. Risk management, there's a whole bunch of tools here, that help us find the needle in the haystack. And the AI can help us to truly, finally get that multi-level visibility into the supply chain. Some examples there, the pre-waves, the spheres. What else do we have? EcoVadis has bought some startups to bring in some more AI capabilities. And then on the data side, right, you've got DSilo on the master data, Ultrix on advanced analytics, Tamir, and so on. But if you're wondering about the data in the chart, where did this come from? So this comes from sourcing managers like yourselves or category managers. We've asked them the question, what do you see as the top use case examples, right? So the procurement community has said, hey, we see definitely in the insights and intelligence space, followed by contract management, right? So concrete examples, process orchestration, the autonomous sourcing, the CLM, and the insights, right? Some of the most popular areas. Okay.
Excellent. And also, just to remind everyone at Casme, we are completely supply neutral with no sponsors, suppliers, or consultants impacting anything. So you really do get the information as to what procurement is thinking about.
Now, just to emphasize the points that Graham said about supplier independence. These are examples, right? We think they're okay. There'll be plenty others as well. We've just kind of picked them because we've seen them as being leaders in the space. You may have other questions like, hey, what's happening? What is the business case, right? It depends what we're talking about, right? One common pain point we have is around supplier discovery. How can we make our sourcing projects run faster? If only we knew who were the best suppliers available to us, right? So again, some specific discovery modules or the fair markets, the teal books can do some of this stuff, right? It can either search databases based on requirements, or you give it a brief and it goes and scours the internet and finds the answer for you. Autonomous sourcing, I've been talking about quite a bit, right? This is the idea that the technology is not yet ready to do complex supplier negotiations, complex in the way of multi-round. But if we're talking about spot buys, simple haggle, simple negotiations, just negotiate on a payment term or a price and a payment term, this seems to be a very powerful tool. It's focused around the lower complexity, the lower risk, what I call the tactical spend. And, some of the companies that we work with have reported, hey, 30% increases in capacity, maybe even giving us a couple of extra percentage points in terms of cost savings. So that seems to work. Many of the large multinationals well on the way for, scaling up the level of spend, the number of projects running through that. Contract analytics or developing our contracts is another key one that people call out. Summarized contracts seems to be, a really popular use case. Hey, my contract's 50 pages, 100 pages. I didn't negotiate it. I'm less familiar with it. What do I need to know, right? So getting that quick summary, plus also other insights, analytical insights about the state of the contracts for my spend category, etc. Compliance, non-compliance, levels of risk, etc., etc. And the next slide I really wanted to cover was around the source to pay agents, right? So at the start, I was talking about AI generally, and I was talking about Gen AI and how that can create human-like content. And then I also mentioned the AI agents, right? Increasing the level of automation. So there was a point in the chat there, I think it was from Richard, about, hey, a lot of this stuff is more automation than true AI. Well, it's the agents that were at the start of this next S-curve, the innovation curve, that's really going to look to change things, right? And the agent pack or the agent build pack is being deployed into the likes of SAP with the SAP Dual landscape, or there's specific service providers, or there's other technologies like the process orchestration tools that are going to come with also the agent builder pack, right? So this stuff is coming, and the goal, the aim is to increase the overall level of utility, automation, effectiveness of the tools, right? And if you're thinking, well, hey, which aspects of our processes can it impact? Well, across the whole source to pay landscape, you can see very many examples here. And at the very least, through automation, it needs to make stuff run faster, right? We're so much busier these days, so much extra to do. Stuff just needs to run quicker. Some examples there.
Oh, sorry.
Let me just pick a couple, like supplier insights, right? So remind me when something's changed in the marketplace or in the world, we need to refresh the category strategy. Something around budget allocations, right? We've hit the limit or we need to refresh that. On the P2P side, so the operations space, right? The data entry on the PO, is the PO valid, correct coding? What about tax compliance, PO to invoice matching, supplier comms automation, etc., right? Just, hey, supplier certificate is expired, need a refresh, right? So the AI can actually be useful to do stuff that no one ever had time for before. Okay, prompt engineering. Rizwan, almost your
Well, we're getting
time.
to a poll first, then we're going to this one. So, Tara, let's go live with the third poll, the final poll for this this session before we hand over to Rizwan. So, which AI or GPT tools have you used, either generally or specific to your company? Please select all that apply. So you can pick all of those. Whilst you're looking down the list, let me just give you some support here. No, I've not used any AI or chat GPT tools. I've used company created AI. I've used ChatGPT. I've used Microsoft Copilot. I've used other tools as DeepSeek, Perplexity, etc. I've used tools for general information on a topic. I've used tools for productivity, notes, writing documents, preparing a slide. I've used tools for analysis. What is X? What could happen if X? And I've used tools for procurement specific topics, Porter's forces analysis, largest suppliers, contract text, etc. Others, please put in the chat. So which AI or GPT tools have you used, either generally or specific to your company? Give you some few seconds just to add your response there. Okay, I can see them coming in. So I think we covered most of the options there. So I think, have you had enough time? I think the answer is yes. In the interest of time, let's end the poll and share the results. Once again, the percentages don't apply because you can multiple response. No surprise, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, that's the same feedback as we've got from our own benchmarking. And then the lines go down quite significantly. I think it's the company created one or the tools for general information. Any comments on that, Nick?
From my side, it's still the opportunity at the bottom of the scoring here, right? So, you know, we might be asking it for general information, but we're not yet tucking into more of the advanced capabilities like suggest some contract language or do some analysis for me, right? These tools, they understand business to a degree, they understand procurement to a degree. Like, try that out, right? Try it out, right? Because it can save us some time, right? That's my quick comment.
Okay.
Yeah, no surprises there on the top dogs. ChatGPT, it's the go-to for most people because it's the one that's in the spotlight. It's had the most hype. It's had the most exposure, and people know it, so they go straight to ChatGPT. And Microsoft Copilot it's caught up with ChatGPT, and I think that's primarily because a lot of companies are now starting to take on the Copilot licenses, and more people now have access to it and have exposure to it. So yeah, no surprises there. But I've done this poll a number of times now, and every single time I'm surprised by at least 1%. There's always 1% who have somehow completely dodged any interaction with AI and GPT. So yeah.
Excellent. Rizwan, over to you.
Thank you very much. Should I share from my side?
Yeah, let's. You should be able to just take over.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see that. Yep. I think that's me.
You need to make it full size. That's all.
Oh, okay.
It's always dangerous when you do something live.
Yeah. There is an option, isn't there? Okay. I'll tell you what, why don't you drive Graham for now, and I'll take over when I do the Copilot.
Okay, right. Let me
Sorry.
share.
Yeah, display settings. That's right. Thank you, Shannon. Okay.
Okay, this side
Oh,
first then.
thank you very much. Yes. So when we've asked this question before, very similar to what you said, 95%, and there's always a small percentage who say they haven't used any AI or GPT tools, but 95% have had some kind of interaction or exposure to AI or GPT type tools. Now, I'm going to use the phrase GPT tool whenever I'm talking about either Chat GPT or Copilot or anything else. Okay, so GPT tools. And Chat GPT is the go-to for everybody. It is the one that's started the hype, and not necessarily started AI or Gen AI, but it started the hype. It's the one in the spotlight, and it's the one that most people are aware of, and that's where they go straight away. And you can see that it's close in second place is Microsoft Copilot, and that is because more and more companies are taking on Copilot licenses. But actually, in our survey today, Copilot was actually ahead of ChatGPT, so we can see that is already happening. And what it's primarily being used for, again, similar to what you said today, mostly for productivity. So just getting that draft going, just creating that initial document preparation, that initial slide, that email. And I know that somebody asked earlier on, sort of how do you create a slide? And that's, Copilot. You can basically put in a question in Copilot in a PowerPoint, and you can say, please create or start a draft of a PowerPoint presentation on X topic. So a lot of people are using for productivity there, but then a lot of people have now started to use, you can see it's almost equal. They have now started to use it for research and getting more information on a particular topic. But this is what we're going to talk about now with prompting. You can do more than just do the research. You can get it to do the actual work as well. So next slide, please. We'll get onto that side. And there are other tools as well, such as Claude and Perplexity and Grok, which are gaining a lot of ground. So there are other tools on the market which people are actually now, so they're so mature with these platforms, they're actually starting to get their favorites. I'm a Perplexity person, so I like that a lot. I think Nick uses Grok a lot. There are people who actually, there's an almost cult-like following for Claude, and Claude is taking a lot of business away from ChatGPT. So it is getting quite mature and a bit nerdy on the sort of preferences, but this is what we're talking about: how much more you can use GPT tools for. And you can see from this list here, it's some deep stuff. Develop a category strategy. That's not a simple task. That is actually some deep, detailed work that you have to perform. And yes, you can use Copilot to, at the very least, get it started. And we're talking about enhancing up to 80% acceleration and productivity as a minimum. Just even as a novice, you can get 20 to 30% productivity increase. No problems at all. Because what you're getting the GPT tool or Copilot to do is do the heavy lifting, do the initial draft. And that's what takes most of the time, right? Getting the information together, triaging what's useful, what's not useful, compiling some sentences, paragraphs around it. You can get Copilot to give you that leg up. So you can ask a very specific question: write for me a procurement strategy for packaging. And you can even give it the template. You can say, here's my corporate standard template, create the strategy for me inside this template. And as long as the template has headings, it's got some sort of an organized structure, the tool will provide that information to you, provide the start, or at least the start of a category strategy for you in that template. Now, these are all examples of quite basic prompts. We are going to now talk about how you enhance those to become robust, more meaningful, give you much more accurate and detailed context-specific information. You can even do some supply exploration. So you can say, find a supplier for me for electronic assembly, but I want my supplier to be in the Far East. Alternatively, you can say, I want my supplier to not be in the Far East, but I want to source from a low-cost country, and they need to be CSRD compliant. Okay, so you can put those parameters in, and it will return, the Copilot or GPT tool will return a response to you with the references. It will say, these are the references that I've used, and you can actually go into those references and do a sense check or a fact check and make sure that the that the recommendations that the GPT tool has given you are ones that you want to move forwards with. You can prepare a negotiation plan. Graham was talking earlier on how we should be doing more of that, and you can use you can load up your RFX, you can load up your the responses that you had from your suppliers, and you can say, suggest to me a negotiation strategy, but you've got to give it a name. You're trying to get a price down, you're trying to get find a supplier who's got consistent good quality, you're trying to find a supplier who's more innovative. So you load up the responses, and you can say, suggest to me a negotiation strategy. You can even say, give me 2 or 3 negotiation strategies that I can employ. So these, I'm not going to go through every one of these items, but it gives you a flavor for how much intellectual work you can actually do with GPT tools, and it's much more involved, much more intellectual, and that's why it contributes to an 80% acceleration, potentially up to an 80% acceleration in productivity. Like I said, you can get at least 20 to 30% at a novice level. As you get better and better at it, we're talking about getting up to almost 50%. When Gen Zs get into the workplace, it'll be second nature to them. They'll be 80% productivity probably when they hit the ground running, and they can TikTok the rest of the time. But could we have next slide, please? So how do you create a good prompt? So as I said, the list that you had before was an indication of how much or what kind of intellectual level you can get to. But how do you create a good prompt really depends on how you ask the question. What you're really trying to do is you're trying to mitigate, and Graham alluded to that earlier, GPT tools can create inaccurate responses, and they can create downright absolute wrong answers, okay? And those are called hallucinations. And how do you mitigate those hallucinations? You have to not just ask the right question, but you have to ask the right question in the right way, okay? There is a way of asking the questions, and there are many ways of actually cutting it, but the basic ingredients of a good prompt is the goal. What do you want? Do you want a report? Do you want a presentation? Do you want a white paper? Do you want a project matrix? Do you want a SWOT analysis? What is it that you want as an output? So you have to have a goal. What is it that you want as an output? Then you have to provide some context. You can even give it a voice. I am a category manager. I'm going to be presenting to the CPO, right? And you've created a voice and the audience. And then you say, we're embarking on a new sourcing exercise for X category. We're looking for, we're expecting an increase in demand over the next 12 months, etc., etc. So you can give it some background information. Third item is a supporting data. Now you give it some facts and figures to work with. Here's my spend profile to date. If it's not a new sourcing exercise, if it's an existing category that you're sourcing, you load up your existing spend profile, and then you load up the demand profile, and you can give it all the information that you can. Call it performance to date of your current supply base. So give it as much information as you can. Okay. So those are the 3 main ingredients. The 4th element, the additional influencing factors, I call that the topping on your ice cream, right? What do you want? Do you want sprinkles? Do you want raspberry syrup? Do you want a chocolate flake? So it's something that it's a nice to have, but you don't have to have it, but it does help. And those additional factors might be things like, I want you to take into consideration geopolitical factors, tariff impact. I want to mitigate my risk against inflation, economic trends, or recessions, or wage inflation, whatever it is that you're worried about. You can add that flavor as part of your package in that prompt. Now, you can see how many layers we've put into that instruction, and that is what helps to mitigate the hallucinations or inaccurate answers, because what AI does is it's like talking to a high functioning, highly intellectual individual, but with no knowledge of, with no common sense, right? So I make it akin to somebody who's always had A stars throughout their lives, every subject, they've always had A stars. They've just come out of university with a first-class degree, but they've got no understanding, they've got no business sense, they've got no understanding of corporate environment, and they don't even know what they don't know. So they don't know what follow-up questions to ask, all right? So what AI won't do is it'll ask you clarification questions. It won't say, what do you mean by that? So you have to fill that gap in its knowledge. Where it doesn't have that, that information in the gap in its knowledge, it makes an assumption, and that's the assumption that then contributes to the hallucination, and that's what you're trying to minimize. So next, and I think I'm going to go, I'm actually going to go into Copilot now after this slide, actually. Let's do that after this slide. So example of a good prompt, what should be on my negotiation strategy for the attached proposal, right? It's very general, it's very vague, it doesn't give you the context. The right way to ask the question would be describing the situation, why are you negotiating, who you're negotiating with, what is the background to this exercise, to this sourcing exercise. And then you can even say, like I explained before, you can say, give me a possible negotiation strategy, or even give me 3 possible negotiation strategies. You can even say, tell me what what my supplier might use as a negotiation strategy. I'll give you another example of a prompt. So here's one. Create a category strategy for category X. Okay, again, very vague, very general. But a good prompt, good version of that prompt would be to explain why you're sourcing this, why, what's the performance been like, who you're currently using, what's their level of compliance been like, what are the elements or the risk factors that you're trying to cover, right? So you give it all of that information, the geographical boundaries, the economic boundaries, the spend profile, the demand profile, and you say, I need a detailed category strategy document that I'm going to submit to the CPO. Now that also given it has also given it a voice. So it's very specific, very context specific, and therefore you're going to get a context specific answer as a result. So now I'm going to attempt a real live version, and I'm going to go into Copilot. So let me share my Copilot screen. Okay. Hopefully that comes up as normal.
Yes, it does.
Yep, Copilot screen. Excellent. Thank you very much. So let me put a prompt in there. So here we go. So I'm typing in, I'm a category manager for packaging. So I've given it a voice. I'm a category manager for packaging. Create for me a category strategy. There's your goal. Create for me a category strategy for packaging using our current spend as the baseline, as detailed in the attached document. Now I'm going to give it some additional data in the document and apply the forecast trend according to our demand profile in the same document. So I have a forecast and a demand profile. Now this is my topping on the ice cream. Also consider the impact of geopolitics, economic factors, tariffs, and other relevant insights, including the strategy, a set of recommendations and actions, and a crowdlogic analysis of risk. Now that's quite a meaty request that I've made. Now I'm going to drop this file in here. So here we go. I'm going to drop the file. This has got the forecast and demand profile. Okay, 3-year spend. It's loading up, and there we go. I click the go button, and it's now going to analyze the document that I've loaded up. It's looking at all the different parameters that I've given it, and it's now trying to extract the information from its baseline, from its database. Now remember, Copilot is actually built on GPT-4o. Okay, so it's actually using that as its backbone, as an engine. So I suppose you could say it's sort of GPT Lite that Copilot is using, but it's doing a lot of analysis there, a lot of detailed analysis, and hopefully it should give an output soon. The thing with this is I can actually, that prompt, because it is quite a meaty prompt, I can potentially carve that up into subtasks as well. I can actually break it up into subtasks, generate an answer for one subtask, and feed that answer into the next subtask. So I could have broken it up, and it actually potentially could have given me a much more accurate response. And that's what I was talking about when I said there are many ways of actually getting the most out of a GPT tool, because you don't have to ask the question in one go. You can actually do it piecemeal, and actually you can get a much more accurate answer if you do it piecemeal. And there we go. So it's going to give me, so it's done a bit of analysis. and now develop a comprehensive category strategy. We'd like to proceed with this now. Yes, please proceed with the strategy. Oh, I have to click the go button. There we go. So it first of all, it analyzed the mock-up document that I gave it. So it analyzed the document, and there we go. So that's why it took so long first time around. It was actually looking at the content of the document, and it's created a category overview, a spend and demand insight, external factors impacting the strategy, and it's broken it down into geopolitics, sustainability. It's even looked at sustainability. I didn't ask it to do that. I just asked it to look at other relevant factors. There's your CrowdJig matrix. Yes, it doesn't do graphics, but it has given me a table which I can probably translate into graphics in my own time, in my own products. And there you go. It's given me some strategic recommendations: sourcing and supply management, demand inventory planning, cost management, and an action plan. There you go. And it's given me an action plan in a tabular form. So there you've got the start of a category strategy. And that's what I mean by it does that heavy lifting for you to get you going on your journey to actually finalizing the category strategy with your own intellect afterwards, but it's done the initial work for you. So hopefully that was useful.
Excellent. And we've got about 2 minutes, 2 minutes to go. So thank you for that live demonstration there. I guess my question would be, can you be certain that all the information that it's going to get has come from trusted sources, or is that something you shouldn't worry about because you're only using it as a draft to start you?
No, that is a very good question. It does give you references at the end. When it creates a strategy for you, it tells you all the reference points that it's actually used. And that's what I was talking about earlier on. You can actually go and look at, you can fact check and sense check all the references that it's used, just to make sure that what it's told you does actually make sense. So that's another element of your own personal intellectual capacity that you apply. And this is where we actually get to free up a lot of our tail chasing time, because we can now actually apply our intelligence and intellect to doing really value added work.
Right. Excellent. Gentlemen, we are out of time. Really appreciate all the live demo. My goodness, that makes it stressful when it's a live demo rather than just a PowerPoint. Rizwan, thank you so much for that. Likewise for Nick. We'll be sharing the recording with everyone, and I'm sure we'll do this again. We didn't think that we would be doing it here in June 25, but such is the rate of change, then we will. So on behalf of everyone at CASME and also the Hacker Group, thank you very much for joining, and look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. Thank you all. Goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.